Technical difficulties.
We do. That's a good song, Red Skies at Night, which we will probably use in a future Periscope.
Keep the formula.
Do I want to try
the real formula. With a little help from Google.
Just let it play.
A phone plan by Google.
Anybody out there know how to not get copyright striked for playing music? Oh, I love that song by the Fix.
Rising Serpent, hello.
Hey, oh, awesome. Hey guys, it's time for our Ides. Ides. We've been doing this for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in March. No, it'll be 2 years.
The next episode will be 24. So
right, and those of you that have watched this before know that the Ides used to be before Shakespeare's time. It used to be a time of celebration. Bringing in
New Year, the plan. A lot of people believe that our New Year should be in March because that's when, the spring and planting of your crops, and it was actually a time also where you did forgiveness of debts to each other. It was
But it was a time
positive
of celebration. It was a positive. And so when Trump won and, he won on Make America Great Again, we wanted to make the Ides great again. And the Ides actually for this month fell on the 13th, but that was the college championship. So we didn't want to interfere with that. So we held it on the 15th, which everybody thinks
Which
the
it
Ides.
usually it is on the 13th. It's only on the 15th on 4 months out of the year. But,
Right.
We're close and a cigar earlier.
Right. So anyway, tonight's subject, the title is "There's a Virus in the Simulation." Yeah. And, the simulation, you hear Scott Adams talking about it and some, Mike Cernovich and some other people talking about it. Simulation, when we think of it like the Truman Show or,
Yeah.
I'm wearing this shirt from Mike Cernovich's Hoaxed. Everything they told you was a lie. That's part of the simulation. We've all been conditioned and trained to think and believe a certain way.
For decades.
And most of the time, we're believing in lies. But there's a virus in the simulation, and that virus is truth. And sometimes there's good bacteria in your.
You need good bacteria too.
And the truth is the answer to what's all that ails us. And so we wanted to talk about, in light of the situation in Iran, what's happening there, and propaganda, because there's a lot of propaganda. That's why we believe what we believe is propaganda our whole lives. And so we're going to talk about propaganda.
The legalization
that where our government can do that to us legally, and that happened in 2012 or 13?
2013.
Iran and Soleimani, and then we're going to end with a very, I found this today as I was researching stuff, that something called the Red House Report, which was pretty mind blowing. We're going to end on that one.
It ticks you off sometimes. Truth will set you free, but it will tick you first.
It will tick you off.
You kind of get, but then you settle in. You go, okay, so a mature mind can handle it and start going, okay, well, what is true, and start discerning.
Right. So we just start analyzing these things that we research. When you tune into Fox News or CNN or all these propaganda outlets, they have all these analysts and experts.
Notice you said Fox or CNN.
Yeah.
So it doesn't.
It's not, this isn't a left or right thing or a Republican or Democrat thing. And Lou and I, one of our goals is to get you out of that mode of thinking, because
False binary.
You're going to learn tonight that it is a false binary. And a lot of you already know that anyway. But truth is truth. It has no agenda. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
And so we want to. So we're going to start with a little bit of Iranian Persian history.
Well, you talked about we want to talk about the propaganda stuff. So.
Yeah, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
We want to base it on the history of what little history of Iran, because the stuff that's going on in Iran, the attacks on our embassy, and then Trump taking out Soleimani, and then mainstream media hyping up
The
World War.
airliner shot down.
Yeah.
Flying out of Tehran during a fight,
And
supposedly.
then mainstream media acting once again like we're fixing to go to World War III, like we did with North Korea, like we did with Syria, and we didn't. But all of this stuff we're talking about tonight is just all so connected, and we need to be cognizant of the propaganda, and it's everywhere. And I don't know how long. Maybe it's been here forever. I guess it's been here.
Yeah, and cognizant also of just the players involved and how they connect to each other, and how
it's
they
gonna blow your mind.
Roy Brandon Hatfield.
Because the Iranian situation that's going on now, if you remember the Iranian deal, which Trump labeled the Iranian deal that Obama did was like the worst deal in American history, and he's right about that. But it's not the first time that we've interfered in Iranian affairs, and we can trace it all the way back to like 1953, when the declassified documents. We know through declassified documents that we were responsible for the coup in 1953, when they were. You see the pictures of what westernized Iran, where they're it looks like any Western country.
Let's get into Iran. So and I called it Persia. It wasn't it was called Persia up until 1935 officially. So they didn't actually change the name to Iran until 1935. Persia was there's a cradle, one of the cradles of civilization. Long history going back 5,000 years. Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
So we wanted to kind of give just a brief history of Persia. You've heard of Persia in the the movie 300. Shahs, the people of Iran have more freedom. I'm going to get into that a little bit too, because the Shah is not that good of a person, and not so through our research, kind of open our eyes. And what I also want to point out is all the stuff we found out that we're going to share with you tonight is open source, and us just getting on and finding and discerning and trying to. And even though we have a disclaimer, some of this stuff may not be true either. I mean, we look at reports and stuff, and like CNN reports, okay.
Yeah, and then they have on TV, they'll have this is an expert on Persian culture, or
And it turns out they're just an Iranian sympathizer.
Yeah, or a Qatari paid. Who knows? Somebody there to propagandize you, but we're here to actually analyze it.
And although wish is not a plan,
the Middle East is very, very complicated.
Although wish is not a plan, we do wish that we had at least the access that CrowdStrike had to search the NSA databases like they got to do.
Yeah, until they got shut down.
Them and other ones. But so you've got Persia. You've heard about them through 300, and they became a really big empire, biggest empire at the time, back in like 600 BC. And so I just want to.
No, don't. You don't know.
Yeah, could just be it. So you got Iran, which was called Persia until 1935, and storied history going back several thousand years. But we're going to get into the 20th century. And so in 1906, there was a coup there, and the British have been involved there for a lot longer than we have. And they had a petroleum company there, which eventually became BP. And 06, they kind of got a democracy going. They had some ups and downs through the next couple of decades. Then you get to World War I, and lots of problems there. So then post World War I, you get into the British are still, heavily involved in Iran. And I need to pull up this article. I found so much.
Too much.
There's rabbit holes just looking at Iran. And, fast forward, we get to 1953. And back in 2013, 2013, the CIA admitted to their role in the coup.
Yeah, we have declassified documents that show that we were responsible for that coup.
And they got rid of this prime minister. I don't want to butcher his name. His name, I believe, was Mohammed Mossadegh. And he was, at the time, he was he wanted democracy. He wanted a monarchy like the British have at the time, where it's not just an absolute ruler. And he had a lot of support of the people, because he was also trying to nationalize the oil companies, because they got a raw deal from the Brits. And he was, pissing off the Brits. And so in 53, it took a couple of years to get it going, because Clement Attlee was the prime minister at the time, and Truman was the president of the U.S. at the time, and neither one of them wanted to do a coup.
Right.
And some of the Brits did. You get into 52 and early 53, you get Churchill comes back into the prime ministership in Britain, and Ike, is elected. And somehow, you get a Republican president and a so-called conservative leader in Britain, and now you've got some guys that support a coup.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I know a lot of you know about the Eisenhower clip going around showing Eisenhower warning everyone about the military-industrial complex. And I just found it interesting that Truman didn't want to do the coup, but Eisenhower, this guy that we have somehow
first in the opening year of his administration, he said, "Yeah, let's do this." Now, what you will not find, just like you don't find with Hitler with the Holocaust, you won't find Eisenhower's signature on something saying "do the coup."
Right.
His style was be verbally involved with things like that, but not to have it in written discussions. But Truman spent, his 8 years, he did this stuff. At the end of the 8 years, he goes, "Hey, watch out for that military-industrial complex." So then you're kind of wondering, well, what was your thoughts on it the 8 years prior to your last day in office? But So the CIA gets involved with the MI6, and these guys, you can look this stuff up. They paid people on both sides. They paid people to look like supporters of Mossadegh, and then go and beat up people.
Right.
Kind of like some
Soros.
similar to some stuff that's going on
Yeah,
here in the
Soros
U.S.
and Antifa.
They gave him. I think they maneuvered Mossadegh into becoming an autocrat himself, because he ended up getting the population to turn against him. And we get to the Shah. The Shah was a young guy at the time, and I think he was probably kind of a playboy type.
Yeah.
And he wasn't really involved with the government, but most of the power was with the prime minister. Well, during this coup attempt, they think it's about to fail. The CIA does, and the Shah flees to Italy, to Rome.
Right.
First, he goes to Baghdad, and then he goes to Rome, and he's kind of hiding out there for a bit. So they think it's failed because the guy they sent to arrest the prime minister of Iran is arrested himself.
Yeah.
And the Shah flees, and they think it's but then they regroup. The prime minister made a miscalculation. He urged his supporters, go back to your homes, live life normally. He tried to get back to normalcy way too quickly. Well, the CIA and the MI6, they regathered. They got their some new plans together and said, well, we got to go out a different way. So they paid a lot of bribes. They hired more street thugs and stuff to get into the streets. I think almost 1,000 people died in this coup.
Yeah.
And U.S. is part responsible for that. So you get a couple of days later into the coup. This is in August of '53. The U.S. decides to send over a gentleman to go talk to the Shah to convince him to go back to Iran, because they got stuff going on, workings. And it's Norman Schwarzkopf Sr.
Right.
So remember the vaunted hero of the first Iraq War, Stormin' Norman. His dad, he was a major general at the time, is sent to Rome, and I haven't been able to find much about what was the reasoning, what was his expertise in sending. We got to send Schwarzkopf Sr. to talk the Shah of Iran to go back into.
And how interesting
Iran.
During those days of what Stormin' Norman in Desert Storm, his backstory, because there's more to this guy.
I just found this out, within the last hour, and Schwarzkopf also Sr., by the way, he was the first state police of New Jersey, the head of the state police of New Jersey. He was one of the first people on scene at the Lindbergh kidnapping in 1933, I believe it was. And I just an odd coincidence, I guess.
Yeah.
But they sent him. They convinced the Shah to go back. The CIA acknowledged this in 2013, like I said. And just some quick notes on Iran. It's not an insignificant country even today. It seems kind of backwards in some ways, and it's a lot of sanctions going on and stuff. But it's the second largest nation by land in the Middle East. It's the 18th largest in the world. It's the 17th most populous in the world.
Right.
They have almost 88 million people. So they're very consequential. And the point I wanted to make about the Shah, because Janet brought that up, that we always see the pictures spread on Twitter about how open and free it was before the revolution in '79, because we're about to get into that also. Is a lot of the people in Iran were really upset with just the meddling going on from 1906 to 1953, and they thought it was too much. I think they were pushing too much Western culture on them.
So when you see those pictures, it was cool. You see those and it looked just like us, but in the background brewing, was a lot of resistance to that kind of change.
Well, and it was also the coup started because the prime minister, Mossadegh, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he nationalized the oil industries, and he was going to knock Britain out of their, because Britain was giving them 16%.
It always goes back to
of their net profits, the oil and the money. And so, the U.S. at the time was even trying to get Britain to kind of back down a little bit and kind of negotiate with this man. And they wouldn't do it. Britain wanted what they had, and they were going to keep it no matter
Right.
what. And so there's a lot of resentment towards the UK and the US, especially the UK at first, before 53. But then going after, you see the US and UK meddling in them all the time, and
Right.
there's a lot of resentment with that. So then you come up to 79,
Right.
and then
And
you've got Carter and
there's no declassified documents showing that we were responsible for that coup, but the Guardian had an article about Washington's hesitant plans for a military coup in pre-revolutionary Iran. So what they're finding now is there was a lot of coordination and collusion going on between the Carter administration and these leaders in Iran. So we're just now finding, well, I'm not going to say just now, but in the last 20 years, you're getting these declassified documents about the 1953 coup. I have a feeling that when you get the declassified docs for 1979, you're going to see that we were behind that too.
And if you go around that time, George H.W. Bush was CIA director from 74,
75.
73 to, he was a predecessor to whoever was CIA director at the time.
Right. So we were heavily involved in Iran, and then the coup in 1979. A lot of people think that's where a lot of the terrorism,
especially the huge resentment in America's Satan and
right,
down with America, but also in the lead up to 79, America had started pulling back its support from the Shah of Iran, and a big part of that reason was because the Shah was going his own way and he was being more independent and not kind of kowtowing to what we wanted and stuff. So that might have been maybe at the very least the USA just went, okay, we know some things are happening against you and we're not going to help you this time.
And it's funny when that, because we saw that happen with Gaddafi, Egypt. Of course, I don't know that the leader of Egypt was going. He was pretty much a very good ally of the U.S. when Obama kind of threw him under the bus. But we have a history of meddling in the affairs of other countries,
And so when we get to 79 Iran, I don't know if anybody remembers, but when Ahmadinejad was president of Iran, then people found photos of him. He was part of the hostage taking at the embassy. And we in Nevada now, through all of our stuff, just in side conversations, have wondered if that was theater itself, the hostage situation itself, because we found the name of the man who was a hostage at the time.
You know about the NIAC group, what does NIAC stand for? NIAC. It's an Iranian group that was founded by
National Iranian American Council.
Yeah, it was founded by Trita Parsi, which I didn't realize was a man, but it's a man. But anyway, NIAC's advisory board members are former Undersecretary of State Thomas Pickering and John Lambert, a former U.S. hostage in Iran.
And he was a board member of NIAC until his recent appointment as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Iran.
Right. Now, this group, NIAC, however you say it, they were busy in the Obama administration, had like 30 visits to the White House, especially during the time when Obama was negotiating the Iran deal. And NIAC was very...
Good morning, Daniel.
Was critical. When you think of NIAC, you can think of people like Linda Sarsour. I saw a connection with her. They claim to be this, kind of benign group. They say they were created, after 9/11 for Iranian Americans to be able to condemn the attacks.
Oh yeah, they're to enable them.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Why wouldn't you be able? Yeah.
Yeah, to enable Iranian Americans to condemn. They could just we need
as a grassroots group aimed at strengthening
their voice.
So the thing about this NIAC, and the reason we're talking about this is, one of our topics tonight is propaganda, and guys, it is coming from all sides. So this NIAC group. Okay, I'll come back to that after this. The person that founded the NIAC group also founded, I know you guys have heard of the Soros Koch, the new union, to form a think tank.
Funny how the Koch brothers aren't being
they're not
lambasted anymore on
for
the
this.
left.
But the founder, Trita Parsi, he's also the founder for that think tank. which is interesting. So now Soros and Koch, you got the far left and the far right, and I don't consider the Koch brothers far right. But a lot of people do.
Yeah, they're just neocon.
To combat what? I think it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do or what they're going to be behind, or will we even know? Because I happen to think it's going to be, propaganda type stuff, like the NEAC group who has lobbied Congress basically through Iranian influence, like the mullahs and the shahs, not the good people, not the people that want to reform it. And they are lobbying people in Congress to do their bidding. Meanwhile, they don't have to apply for the FARA Act.
Some of these guys are not even registered with FARA, and I thought that was a big deal because the FBI and the Justice Department's all over FARA for.
They're going after General Flynn, supposedly not registering right, but. So you see a lot of connections when you start researching this. That makes your head turn. So like you had in 2016 when they were trying to push the Trump Russia thing. Small group the same. Barack.
I think and I even think Barack is not even a huge part of it. Barack is.
He's just a puppet.
He's one of the tools that they used.
He's just a puppet. So in 2016 to push the Trump Russia narrative, there was CrowdStrike and there was Fusion GPS. And now we have a new one with this Ukraine stuff called Area 1 that has to do with Burisma. I don't know if any of you have heard of Area 1. I just learned about it today. But did y'all know that CrowdStrike and Fusion GPS wasn't even created until 2011? Which coincides with when, it wasn't legal for our government to propagandize the American people until
before 2013. So we had the Smith-Mundt Act that was put in 1946, I believe, and this was basically the State Department's green light to propagandize the world. It was at the time it's to put out ideals of freedom and democracy and things like that, and in the it's forerunner of getting Voice of America and other things like that. You get fast forwarded to 2010 during the Obama administration. We've got folks and people trying to alter that act and make it to where because it was illegal to use this propaganda on domestically.
Right.
And so 2010, we start getting actors during the Obama administration to change this so that it's just wide open everywhere, domestically everywhere. And actually, you'll be surprised to learn that it was Republicans that were pushing this.
Yeah,
they're
the ones that introduced it. They're the ones that started it.
And you get into the NDAA, which is the National Defense Appropriation Authorization Act, and they do this every year. But instead of doing budgets now, which that's fallen apart since going back to the Bush years, that everything gets tacked onto these NDAAs.
Right.
And so in 2013, and leading up to it, this repeal part of this Smith-Mundt Act was getting pushed by Republicans and then Democrat co-sponsors, of course. The Republicans are in charge after 2010 because of after Obamacare stuff and Tea Party, everybody's pissed off. Republicans are pushing this.
The Tea Party wave brought in
these
and
guys,
introduced and passed a bill that allowed our government to propagandize the American people.
Specifically the State Department and this is a good one.
I
the
personally
US Information
would like the Republican Party to answer for that.
Yeah.
And the NDAA that was just recently reapproved that had all the stuff about the FISA courts, and we know all of the shenanigans and the corruption going on with the FISA courts, and you're telling me that all of these guys, Matt, I don't know how Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, all these people, did they vote yes on it? I don't even know. I know that it passed.
I did look at the 2013 vote, and I looked at a couple of votes before that. Is that Republicans supported these changes stronger than the Democrats did.
Yeah.
And so that's when me and Yvonne over especially the last year, just started looking back and going, where has there been red or blue or dim Republican? It's always been to split us and just keep us arguing at each other. And,
Right. Because if we're fighting each other and they can continue this grift they've got going on, they can continue letting Jeffrey Epstein not Jeffrey Epstein, but his pedo ring continue on in the background. And while we're fighting each other, they're doing what they do, which is.
And you'll be surprised in many states, the whole Republican caucus in each state voted for this bill in 2013. And another little section in the NDAA in 2013 was allowing to hold Americans without habeas corpus. And so now we're back to the Civil War and Abe Lincoln putting people in jail.
I think they took that out. I'm not sure.
I think it got challenged. I'm not sure if it got taken out completely.
Or if it's still in there. I think that part's taken out.
I think they can still do it to people in the country that are non-citizens or something. I think there was like a carve out or something.
So because now you can propagandize the American people, and it's interesting to me that you have Fusion GPS and CrowdStrike coming about, during that general time frame. And I submit to you that these two groups, they're there specifically to propagandize us, to spin the narrative of deep state or deep pockets or whoever it is. And now Area 1 and Area 1
from Ukraine,
really
is that real?
Can you prove it? Can you prove you're from Ukraine?
What city
Yeah, what city in Ukraine? He'll say Kiev.
You gave it away because you probably know Kiev.
But so now we've got this Area 1 that's putting out what I call propaganda, and what they're saying.
With the help of CNN, the New York Times, Washington
with
Post.
regard to the Burisma, because Burisma is a corrupt company. Ukraine's a very corrupt country. The government is, and so now they're trying to run defense. Oh, nice. I don't know what that says, but
it's Cyrillic.
Yeah. So now they're trying to run defense for Hunter Biden, the Biden's corruption. The fact that the only quid pro quo was.
Well, even Hillary Clinton, they all jump on with the same exact message.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they're doing and it's just
like a journal listing, like the talk, the word of the day.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Area 1 is saying, they're saying the timing of the GRU's campaign in relation to the 2020 U.S. elections raises the specter that this is an early warning of what we have anticipated since the successful cyber attacks undertaken during the 2016 U.S. elections. So here is Area 1 confirming what we now know is debunked and fake about the Trump-Russia stuff that CrowdStrike and Fusion GPS. But their Area 1 it's propaganda, and thanks to our Republican friends, they can now do this legally. And I just wonder how deep that goes, because there was tens of millions of dollars in that bill that was going to be used specifically for like online social media to combat what they call misinformation.
Yeah, and the first reason back in 2010, I can't remember the representative's name, but it was like Al Qaeda has taken over the internet, and we've got to be able to fight them on the same territory in this country, because people wouldn't know that Al Qaeda is bad unless the State Department got involved and told us here in America.
Right. And so, like for Area 1, one of the main guys, his name is Oleg Falkowitz. And just to show you how, I don't know who Oleg Falkowitz, he doesn't sound American. But in 2005, he was hired as a press assistant at the United States House of Representatives. The next year, he left that position. That same month, he was hired as an analyst at the National Security Agency. Okay, this is the guy that founded Area 1, who's now going to propagandize us. Haircut, respect. So then in 2008, he was hired as the Iran mission manager and special assistant for policy and cybersecurity at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. In 2010, he was hired as Director of Technology and Data Science. And then in 2012, he left his position at both the United States Cyber Command and the National Security agency. That same month, he co-founded the organization Squirrel, and the chief executive officer. All right, so this guy. Oh, geez, this guy's. Anyway, who is this guy? He creates Area 1 that who's now given this information. So when you hear this, like these talking points, you'll hear them repeated on CNN and MSNBC, as some reputable source. In 2019, on June 3rd, the Federal Election Commission's legal team issued 2 draft opinions to prevent Area 1 security from offering low to no cost cybersecurity to presidential campaigns due to the potential to curry favor with future politicians.
Imagine.
That same day, Ken Dilanian,
CIA.
Published the article, Ex-NSA Hacker Wants to Give 2020 Candidates Free Cybersecurity Tool. That guy is part of Area 1.
The FEC may stop him. But I also read somewhere in 2020, the FEC did give them the green light and actually suggested the fee they should charge to each
it was like $1,337 that they would offer to, right there. Elizabeth Warren was one of the ones. Russian spies hacked. So Russian spies hacked Ukrainian gas company at the heart of impeachment trial. That's propaganda.
Narrative.
I just want you to know that Area 1, you call your GOP representatives and tell them thanks for letting them propagandize the American people.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't Obama. That was it was Obama. He signed it. But, Republicans introduced that. More propaganda. Okay, so so let's talk about Iran and Soleimani now. So about the attacks on our embassy, which the mainstream media was hoping, they were just hoping that.
But actually, just think about, there was the embassy before in Tehran in 1979.
Yeah.
Soleimani was there.
Oh yeah.
Soleimani was
I don't know
part
if y'all
of that
know
too.
that Soleimani was part of that. So whatever that was, if it was
If it was
theater,
staged or whatever, but there's pictures of him involved with that, within Ahmadinejad and all those guys.
right? And that's the guy that Trump took out. Think about that. Because think about that. Soleimani's a bad guy for a very long time. Reagan didn't do anything about him. Bush,
Marine barracks in Beirut.
Clinton, Bush, Jr., Obama, nobody did anything. And then Trump comes along and he did. That's pretty amazing. So the attacks on our embassy, Trump's going to take out who was responsible for the attacks on our embassy.
He was tied in with the Benghazi.
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, he's been responsible for a lot of this stuff. Maybe even like the Kobar Towers and the attack on our Marines. Beirut. He's just a horrible guy, and that no president has ever taken him out. I think George Bush Jr. had the chance to, and he passed it up. So everybody talks about Bill Clinton not taking
taking Obama.
Osama, not Obama. Osama. They're so close in name.
Oops.
Not taking Osama out, but Bush had the chance to take Soleimani out, and he probably could have saved 600 American lives.
He's in a pod.
Yeah. So they're all the same, left and right, up until you get to.
But there's
Trump.
some other awesome Iranian connections too.
So
besides Soleimani.
So then you have the attacks on our embassy, and then the mainstream media hoping for another Benghazi, and then we don't have that, and then Trump takes out the attacks on our, who orchestrated that. He takes them out, and then mainstream media starts acting like it's going to be World War III, and Trump's a madman.
I think that's like the 4th time.
Yeah,
because
I've lost count.
We've died several times. We died from.
I don't know how we're here talking to you.
We died from tax cuts. Oh, we died because Kavanaugh became Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
So we've died several times. We've had about 3 World War IIIs. So.
We're still kicking. So then, Iran shoots the plane down, which, mainstream media somehow manages to blame Trump
And
for.
And Iran accidentally shot this plane down, but they accidentally tried twice. Because we found out a first missile missed,
right.
and they fired again. And then that took the plane down. And there's no talk anymore about who was on that plane.
Right.
There were these 6 or 7.
And you know
nuclear
what?
specialists and-
I don't know whether they did it intentionally or whether they thought it was an American plane or whether it was
Or
an
they're-
accident in the fog of war and they just made this mistake. I don't know, but they initially tried to claim that it was, an accident, and then a few days later, after realizing that they wouldn't pull that one off.
And it could be. There's 2 factions. There's factions in Iran. There's factions here in the U.S.
Right.
Iran's not one unified country and everybody on the same page. That's obvious by the protests.
Right.
And us, taking out Soleimani could have enabled one side or the other because he was a threat to them.
Yeah.
And so they're feeling their oats, and maybe these guys were trying to get out of Tehran because if I'm a civilian and I'm a tourist in Tehran,
Right.
I'm not flying out of the Tehran airport while missiles are being fired and all over the place.
Yeah, and you would have thought that they would shut those civilian flights down.
And they didn't. They didn't shut any civilian air traffic down at all. So.
And maybe they didn't.
I think there were some people trying to, it's just conjecture, but people were trying to escape. The wrong faction was on the bad end of the stick with Soleimani.
Right.
And the other guys went, "Oh, you're not going anywhere."
Also, something to consider is that Soleimani was like the cornerstone of the Iranian deal. Like, a lot of, just think about this. The money that we gave to Iran for the Iran deal, some of that ended up in Soleimani's hands because he was like the number 2 guy over there. And don't forget, he was in Iraq, somewhere where he wasn't supposed to be, he was not allowed to be.
Mm-hmm.
That guy.
He wasn't supposed to be able to travel at all.
Right. He was the cornerstone of the Iranian deal. And he was taken out by Trump.
Yeah. And I liken him to, back in the Roman Empire, later in the Roman Empire, that, they had these, these strong generals. Julius Caesar was the prime example early on in the empire, is that these strong generals with their own armies and their own legions, their own followings,
they get too powerful.
Threats. They're threats to the emperor.
The leaders of Iran could never say that we did them a favor, but I wonder.
Khamenei's probably just like he saw that his arch rival was dead. He went, and he goes, "Death to America!"
Right, exactly. Which, if you saw that video where they planted that American flag on the ground, and they were going out of their way, except for a handful of people to not step on it. So you just have to know.
Part of that thing too is that it's a big insult in the Middle East for your shoe. Like the guy that threw the shoe at Bush when he was over there.
Right.
That's like a huge insult for your shoe to be on something or like in your face or.
Oh well, yeah.
I think that's why they do that, because when you step on it, something you're really insulting.
Well, they were trying to instigate something there, and they weren't able to do it. So a lot of what you see in these other countries, like Ukraine, Iran, wherever you see these big protests, you need to remember that a lot of that is instigated, bought and paid for, rent-a-crowd mobs, and same thing that we've got going on here.
In some instances, in the past, like in 1953 Iran, they were paid for by the CIA. It went through, and I wonder where all
how much of what's going on all over the world is CIA, because that, if the CIA, who knows who was behind Jeffrey Epstein or.
We're not conspiracy theorists. We're conspiracy queerists.
Yeah.
And the CIA has already admitted to this in 2013. That's a reminder.
Right.
The CIA admitted that they did these things.
Right. So you see these things going on there, and just remember, now it's legal to do that. So we know that they were doing it here in America before it was legal, but now that it's been legalized, you just need to be aware. You can't trust what you're seeing, especially on cable news networks. And this next thing I was going to tell y'all about, I'm just bringing this up because I hadn't heard the story, and it kind of relates to propaganda in a way. But this story was published in Business Insider in 2018, and the headline is, Iranian intelligence reportedly used Google to crack a CIA communication system leading to dozens of deaths. Now, this took place during the Obama years, and I'd never heard of it.
I've never heard of it, and this is from 2018. Never
Right.
The story.
And the story was actually from 2010, but former intelligence officials have revealed a previously unreported breach of a CIA communication systems by Iran. It's a breach that occurred in 2010. Iranian agents, and this is, I don't get this. Iranian agents use simple Google searches to identify and then infiltrate websites that the CIA was used to communicate with agents, according to two former U.S. intelligence officials. The breach would reportedly lead to dozens of deaths around the globe and a cascade of consequences that spanned years. So they used Google searches to identify and then infiltrate the websites that the CIA was using to communicate with agents. Why would that be so easy?
Yeah.
When you're talking about the CIA, you wouldn't think it would be that easy. Former officials say they believe the breach originated with an Iranian double agent that was hired by the CIA. What they claim would be a result of lax vetting, despite a warning from Israel that Iran had identified certain CIA assets. Iran was then able to penetrate a CIA communication systems through a series of Google searches. I'm not sure. One of you guys can get back with me, because it seems like just like what we're doing, these Google searches, that somebody was able to compromise.
Well, I mean, we found out some cool stuff tonight. Just
compromise the CIA, though. So by using, they say Boolean, like Boolean, search operators like and, or, stringing together characteristics of the communications of websites, Iranian intelligence was able to locate multiple other websites that the CIA was using for its communications. And from there, Iran could track who was visiting the sites from where, eventually exposing a large swath of the CIA's network in Iran. So in Iran, multiple informants were imprisoned and executed, and the network was reportedly nearly destroyed. Almost 30 agents there, they say,
were executed.
So in 2008, defense contractor John Reedy, who worked with Iranian sources, blew the whistle on a massive intelligence failure in the CIA, and in 2010 said the nightmare scenario had occurred. Reedy was removed of his assignment and eventually fired. So this is during the Obama administration. He claims that upwards of 70% of our operations have been
would be
compromised.
John Brennan.
Oh,
CIA
yeah, that's
director.
true. So he claims that upwards of 70% of our operations have been compromised, and he was fired. He was removed and fired. So I tend to think that he might be telling the truth. In March, a U.S. grand jury indicted 9 Iranians for allegedly hacking the computers of 7,998 professors at 320 universities.
And how would that not have been a story that's not blown up? 8,000 professors, 320 universities have been hacked by the Iranians.
And yeah,
you know why it's not blown up? Because we're in the lead up to Barack has to get that Iran deal.
Yeah,
and nothing can get in the way.
Nothing was going to stop them. Why would the Iranians? Why would they go to, what
are the professors? What work are they doing that they want to see?
Why were they hacking the professors at universities? Makes you wonder how many double agents are working there. And so one more last thing on that kind of relates to Iran and propaganda and things like that. Okay, so Siemens, it's a German multinational conglomerate and the largest industrial manufacturing company in Europe. Total assets, 150 billion. And the Siemens family goes way back to Germany and Prussia, and wealth and corruption. There's a lot of corruption related to the Siemens company. And there was a scandal in 1914 that there was collusion between several high-ranking members of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the British company Vickers, and Siemens. They had secured a virtual monopoly over Japanese naval contracts in return for a secret 15% kickback. That was in 1914, before the war started.
At the leading into World War I, there were international treaty between the major powers, and it was U.S., Britain, France, Germany, Japan. I believe Russia was in there too. They limited the amount of capital ships they could have, like battleships, destroyers. Each nation had the number that they could have of each.
Right.
So I'm just wondering what's
wonder-
going on with that.
Because we've been told that the war started over, you know, the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand.
Sarajevo.
And I don't believe that. So I have to wonder. We'll never know that. But in late 1932, industrialists Krupp, Thyssen, Siemens, Bosch, Vogler, and 32 other business leaders petitioned Hindenburg to grant Hitler the chancellorship in 1933. And he speaks in the Berlin Siemens factory. You can see him there speaking at the Siemens factory.
Hitler in the middle on a podium talking to the Siemens workers.
And it was interesting. During Hitler's regime, Siemens exploited the forced labor of deported people in extermination camps. The company owned a plant in Auschwitz concentration camp and supplied electrical parts to other Nazi camps. So Siemens is a corrupt company. That's all I'm trying to establish here. And in 2008, following a string of high-profile robbery cases, Siemens agreed to a record 1.6 billion legal settlements with American and European authorities, 1.6 billion in fees with a 1.4 billion in bribes, and that's only the official numbers. So then, you guys remember the Stuxnet virus, which the Stuxnet virus was Siemens related. I think it supposedly infiltrated 14 of their plants, but it was this thing called Olympic Games. Operation Olympic Games is probably the most significant covert manipulation of the electromagnetic spectrum since World War II. The virus later became known as Stuxnet. The malicious software temporarily halted 1,000 of the 5,000 centrifuges from spinning at Natanz, Iran. In 2016, it was revealed that General James Cartwright, and this is the thing I didn't know, Cartwright was the former head of U.S. Strategic Command, leaked information related to Stuxnet. He later pled guilty for lying to the FBI. He didn't face any repercussions for leaking classified information on that.
He just pled guilty for lying to the FBI.
And on January 17, 2017, he was granted a full pardon by President Obama. Now,
3 days before Trump takes the oath of office.
Yeah. Now, James Cartwright is, okay. First of all, I know a lot of you out there know that Peter Strzok has, I think his dad, he was born in Iran and lived there, I think.
He went to school there, too.
Went to school there. The father of Peter Strzok is Peter Strzok Sr. The brother of Peter Strzok Sr. is Mark Strzok. The wife of Mark Strzok is Mariana Strzok. And Mariana Strzok is the daughter of General James Cartwright. And General James Cartwright is the one that leaked classified information on the Stuxnet virus, who Obama pardoned 3 days before
Trump took
office. I mean, I don't know.
And then just remember Lisa Page. Her mother's from Iran.
Valerie Jarrett was born in Shiraz, Iran. She's Iranian American, which I don't know if a lot of people know that. Now, a lot of people found that out when Roseanne tweeted out her, inappropriate.
Which everybody tried to make that a white-black thing.
Yeah, it wasn't, because Roseanne didn't know that she had any black ethnicity in her. A lot of people didn't know that. John Kerry's daughter is married to an Iranian American. There's a lot of go back to Iran. That's just kind of interesting to me. All the little, anytime you start researching these topics, I know you guys out there, you just like with the Stormin Norman, his dad's connections to the Lindbergh kidnapping and the 1953 coup of Iran, like all this stuff, it's always.
And I forgot also that
connected.
Schwarzkopf Sr. trained the Shah of Iran security forces.
Oh yeah, this Norman Schwarzkopf, Stormin Norman's dad, trained who did he train? The
security forces.
The security
for the
forces,
Shah.
Iran. Oh, okay, of the Shah of Iran. What I don't know why we're doing that, but it's just kind of like what in Pensacola, the
we invested a lot in the Shah of Iran in '53, but in '79 we were like, okay, you can have them.
Yeah, and all these current actors now that you see and play, if you start looking at who they're, who their parents were, and a lot of people, you start researching and you won't find anything at all because it's been scrubbed. Like Andrew McCabe, like none of his familial history is past him,
Yeah,
and his wife
yeah.
is listed. So the last thing that I want to get to is something that's called